Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. After the main character dies in his previous life, he wakes up inside of the world of Invincible. He is reborn as a Viltrumite and is able to clone Viltrumites. What will he do with the ability to clone Viltrumites?
Invincible. What if I have Kaminoan cloning? Clone Viltrumites. Chapter 1, White Space Terms. I remember the impact clearly. There was no confusion about what happened. The truck didn't slow down enough. I didn't move fast enough. Metal met bone, and everything ended in a single, clean moment. No drawn-out pain. No time to regret anything. My body shut off immediately. Then there was nothing. Then there was this. White space. Not a room. Not a void. Just white in every direction. No shadows. No edges. No sense of distance. I stood on something that didn't feel like a surface, but it held me anyway. I looked down at my hands. No injuries. No blood. Skin intact. Human. Hey, a voice said. I looked up. An orb floated in front of me. Smooth. Featureless. It gave off a steady glow, not bright enough to hurt my eyes, not dim enough to ignore. Sorry for your death, it said. I stared at it for a second. Then I blinked once. Hey. I glanced around again, just to confirm nothing else had changed. Still white. Still empty. You died, the orb continued. It wasn't premature. I rubbed the side of my face slowly. That's a weird way to start a conversation. It is accurate. Yeah, I figured that part out. I exhaled once, steady. No panic. No racing heartbeat. Just processing. Let me get this straight. I got hit by a truck, I died, and now I'm here talking to a floating ball. Yes. All right. I nodded once. Can I go back? No. The answer came immediately. No delay. No hesitation. I clicked my tongue lightly. Of course not. I shifted my weight slightly, settling into place. So what is this? Judgment? Intake? Or are you about to offer me something? You are eligible for rebirth. I smiled faintly. There it is. I crossed my arms. Same world or different? Different. Memories intact. Yes. Good. I nodded once. Then I'm interested. The orb didn't react. It just stayed there, steady. You will also receive one advantage, it added. Only one. I raised an eyebrow. You're not exactly overselling this. It is sufficient. I let out a quiet breath. Fine. I'll take it. A circular interface appeared in front of me. Clean. Simple. A wheel divided into sections, each labeled. First selection, the orb said. Destination. I stepped closer, scanning the options. A lot of them I recognized immediately. Different universes. Different power systems. Different levels of danger. I didn't hesitate long. Let's spin it, I said. The wheel moved. Fast at first, the names blending together, then gradually slowing. Each label became readable again as it decelerated. It stopped. Invincible, the orb said. I smiled slightly. That works. My mind moved immediately. Viltrumites. Strength. Empire structure. Nolan. Mark. Earth timeline. Conquest phase. Internal purges. I knew all of it. Every major event. Every turning point. All right, I said. Next. A second wheel formed beside the first. This determines the technology you will carry with you. I leaned my head slightly. Integrated, I assume. Yes. Good. I'm not carrying equipment around. The wheel spun. Slower than the first. Or maybe I was just watching it more closely. It stopped. Kaminoan cloning, the orb said. I exhaled softly through my nose. From Star Wars. Yes. I ran through it instantly. Cloning process. Genetic replication. Growth acceleration. Behavioral conditioning limits. Structural requirements. It was all there. Yeah, I said. That's useful. It is. I nodded once. All right. Last one. A third wheel appeared. Final selection, the orb said. Race. I didn't say anything this time. I just watched. The wheel spun. It slowed. Stopped. Viltrumite, the orb said. I let out a short breath. That lines up perfectly. Strength. Speed. Flight. Durability. Lifespan. And more importantly, authority. Viltrumites weren't just strong. They controlled entire systems. They enforced order across planets. And I already knew how they operated. I looked at the orb again. So I'll be born as one of them. Yes. Starting age. Infant. I nodded. Makes sense. Timeline placement aligns with existing events. I didn't need more detail than that. Everything I knew was already enough. Any restrictions? I asked. You will not reveal this process to others. Wasn't planning to. The orb paused for a fraction of a second. Then you are ready. A tear opened in the white space in front of me. Dark. Stable. No distortion around the edges. I stepped toward it without hesitation. I stopped just before entering and glanced back at the orb. You do this a lot? I asked. Yes. All right. I nodded once. Decent setup. Then I stepped forward. The moment I crossed the threshold, everything cut out. No transition. No sensation. Just black. And then. Nothing. Chapter 2, Quiet Growth Phase. I woke up to the same ceiling. Flat. White. Seamless. No seams, no fixtures, no visible source of light. The illumination stayed consistent no matter how long I stared. I blinked once, then shifted my gaze to the side. Empty. No one standing over me. No voices. No movement beyond the faint hum that never really stopped. It wasn't loud. It was just always there, sitting in the background like part of the air. I pushed myself up. 2 months. That was the rough estimate. I didn't count days in any formal way, but I tracked change. Muscle development. Coordination. Processing speed. Everything lined up. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and stood. Balance came naturally now. No wobble. No hesitation. My body responded exactly how I expected it to. Viltrumite biology didn't waste time. I rolled my shoulder once, then flexed my fingers. Strength had already surpassed what a human body at this stage could manage. Not extreme yet, but clearly beyond baseline. Still no welcome committee, I said quietly, my voice calm. No response. Not surprising. I hadn't seen a single Viltrumite since I arrived here. Not one. It made sense. There were barely any of them left. Around 50, give or take. Scattered across space, managing an empire that used to run on overwhelming numbers. Now it ran on reputation and efficiency. They weren't going to spend time watching an infant. Instead, the door slid open. 2 figures stepped in. Not Viltrumites. Tall. Thin. Grey-toned skin. Large, dark eyes. Their movements were precise and controlled, almost mechanical in their consistency. I had seen them every day. Caretakers. One of them carried a tray. The other watched me. "You are awake," the one with the tray said in a flat tone. "I tend to do that," I replied casually. The second one tilted its head slightly. "You continue to vocalize beyond expected patterns," it said. I shrugged lightly. "Keeps things interesting." They didn't react. Of course they didn't. They stepped closer. The tray was placed on a surface beside me. Nutrient paste. Standard. Efficient. No variation. I picked it up and looked at it briefly. "Still no menu options?" I asked. "No," the first one replied. "Unfortunate." I started eating anyway. No point complaining beyond that. The body needed fuel, and this worked. As I ate, they observed. They always observed. Posture. Speed. Consumption rate. Data collection. "You are progressing ahead of projected development," the second one said. "I'm just efficient," I replied lightly. "Clarify." I swallowed, then set the container down. "I don't waste time." They paused, processing. "Noted," the first one said. Of course it was. Everything was noted. I stood again after finishing, wiping my hands casually against the fabric I was given to wear. Simple. Functional. No excess. "I'm going out," I said. "You are permitted," the second one replied. No restriction. That had been consistent too. They didn't confine me. They didn't guide me unless necessary. They just watched. I walked toward the door. My steps were quiet. Controlled. Each movement deliberate without looking forced. As I passed them, one of them spoke again. "You have not requested information regarding your origin." I stopped just at the threshold and glanced back slightly. "Would you answer if I did?" I asked. "No." I smiled faintly. "Then I'm saving us both time." I stepped out into the corridor. The facility was large. Not crowded. Not active in the way human spaces were. Movement existed, but it was minimal. Every individual had a purpose, and they followed it without deviation. The walls were the same as my room. Smooth. White. No decoration. I walked slowly, taking in everything again even though I had already mapped most of it. 2 months of observation wasn't wasted. I knew the general layout. Living quarters. Observation rooms. Medical areas. Restricted sections I hadn't accessed yet. And empty spaces. A lot of empty spaces. Designed for more occupants than currently present. I moved past another pair of caretakers. They didn't stop me. They rarely did. One of them glanced at me briefly. "Subject is mobile," it said to the other. "Confirmed," the second replied. I didn't slow down. Subject. That was fine. They could keep calling me that. I turned into a quieter section of the facility and entered my assigned room again. The door closed behind me with a soft sound. I stood still for a moment. Then I exhaled lightly. "All right," I said under my breath. "Let's get started." I walked to the center of the room and sat down. Legs crossed. Back straight. I focused inward. The knowledge was there. Clear. Structured. Complete. Kaminoan cloning. Not theoretical. Not partial. Fully integrated. I raised my right hand and looked at it. Let's test the system, I said quietly. No hesitation. I extended one finger and pressed it against my opposite palm. Then I increased pressure. Skin resisted. Then it broke. A clean cut. No shaking. No delay. Blood surfaced immediately. Dark. Thick. I watched it for a second. No emotional reaction. Just observation. Then I moved. I guided the blood with controlled motion, focusing on the internal process. The system responded. Not visibly from the outside, but I felt it. A shift beneath the surface. The blood didn't just sit there. It moved. Drawn inward, not by external force, but by something built into me now. I closed my hand slightly, guiding the flow. Good, I said quietly. Inside. The process began. The egg lab, as the knowledge labeled it, activated. It wasn't a physical room in the way a machine would be. It was a biological system layered into my body, separate but connected. The blood sample entered it. Then. Conversion. Cells reorganized. Genetic data stabilized. Structure shifted. Egg formation. I felt it happen. Not painfully. Not even uncomfortably. Just, present. I leaned back slightly, keeping my breathing steady. Efficient, I muttered. From there, the process continued. The formed egg moved deeper into the system. Toward incubation. Artificial womb structures internal, controlled, stable. They received the egg. Growth protocols initiated immediately. Accelerated development. Not instant but far beyond natural rates. I could feel the timeline. Days compressed into hours. Weeks into controlled cycles. I placed my hand over my abdomen lightly. No visible change yet. But I knew it was working. Let's not make a crowd, I said quietly. I adjusted the internal output. 1. Start with 1. No need to scale yet. Control first. Then expansion. I focused again, refining the process. Stability. Nutrient distribution. Growth pacing. Everything aligned with the knowledge I had. No errors. No resistance. Viltrumite biology handled it without issue. Stronger base material helped. I let the system continue for a few more seconds, then began shutting down the active phase. The processes didn't stop completely. They moved into autonomous function. Self-sustaining. Low signature. That part mattered. Detection would be a problem if I wasn't careful. I exhaled slowly, then opened my eyes fully. All right, I said. I looked at my hand again. The cut had already started healing. Fast. Not instant, but visibly closing. Viltrumite recovery. I flexed my fingers once. Convenient. I stood up. Then I focused again, this time on concealment. The system folded inward. Not physically disappearing, but compressing its active signature. Egg lab. Incubation. Growth systems. All tucked behind normal biological readings. No excess output. No detectable anomalies from standard scans. Stay quiet, I said under my breath. The system stabilized. I rolled my neck once, then walked toward the door. Time to move. No point staying in here longer than necessary. I stepped out into the corridor again. Same lighting. Same silence. One of the caretakers was waiting this time. It turned its head toward me as I approached. You remained inside longer than usual, it said. I was busy, I replied casually. Specify. I shrugged. Thinking. It paused. Thinking does not require isolation. For you, maybe, I said lightly. I like my space. It processed that. Noted. Of course it was. I walked past it without slowing down. No signs of suspicion. No change in behavior. Good. I continued down the corridor, my pace steady. Inside, the system continued running. Controlled. Hidden. Active. And I stepped further into the facility. Chapter 3, Bloodline Evaluation. 5 years passed without interruption. No sudden changes. No unexpected interference. Everything progressed in a controlled, steady pattern. My body developed exactly as expected. Viltrumite growth didn't follow human pacing. Strength came early. Control followed quickly. By the end of the 5th year, I was fully capable of functioning beyond what most species would consider adult. The caretakers adjusted their behavior accordingly. Less observation at a distance. More direct instruction. Not emotional. Never emotional. Just efficient. I stood in my room, looking down at my hand. Then I shifted my attention inward. The system was complete. The first egg, the one I created 2 months after arriving here, had finished its cycle. No instability. No degradation. Full maturation. I moved my hand slowly to my abdomen, then activated the internal release. There was a brief sensation of pressure. Controlled. Not painful. Then. Extraction. I guided it carefully, maintaining full control over the process. A body formed outside of me, supported by the final stage of the system. Muscle, bone, tissue, everything structured exactly as designed. Seconds passed. Then it stabilized. A Viltrumite. Fully grown. He stood in front of me, eyes open, breathing steady. No confusion. No hesitation. I looked him over carefully. Physique matched expectations. Muscle density high. No visible defects. Energy levels stable. All right, I said calmly. You look good. He looked at me directly. No expression shift. Just focus. Status? I asked. Stable, he replied evenly. Voice steady. Controlled. I nodded once. Good. Let's keep it simple, I said, folding my arms loosely. You need a name. He didn't respond immediately. I watched him for a second, then spoke. Bakey, I said. He nodded once. Understood. No resistance. Good. I walked a slow circle around him, observing from every angle. Movement fluid. Posture balanced. Any issues? I asked. No, he replied. Memory baseline. Functional. That meant the foundational structure was working. Not full independent experience, but enough to operate, adapt, and respond. I stopped in front of him. Here's how this works, I said calmly. In front of others, we just met. No familiarity. No alignment. He held my gaze. Understood. Privately, you follow my lead. Yes. I smiled faintly. That's what I like to hear. Before I could continue, the door opened. One of the caretakers stepped in. It didn't react to Bakey's presence. Not even a pause. It looked at him briefly, then at me. "You are scheduled for transfer," it said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. "That sounds important. You are to report to Viltrum." That lined up. Right on schedule. I nodded once. "Took you long enough." The caretaker gestured toward Bakey. "Escort unit assigned." Of course. They assumed he was sent by the Empire. That worked perfectly. I glanced at Bakey, then back at the caretaker. "He's with me." "Yes." "Good," I said simply. No further questions from it. No suspicion. Just confirmation. I turned away and walked toward the exit. Bakey followed without a word. As we stepped into the corridor, I slowed slightly, just enough to position my hand out of view. Then I pressed my thumb against my palm again. Skin broke. A small cut. Blood surfaced. I kept walking. No pause. No attention drawn. Inside. The process started again. Controlled. Efficient. This time, I pushed it further. Not 1. 4. That was the current limit. I could feel the strain increase slightly. Not enough to matter, but noticeable. "For it is," I muttered quietly. The system adapted. Egg formation began again. I sealed the cut quickly, letting the natural healing process take over. By the time we reached the transport area, there was no visible trace. The ship was already prepared. Viltrumite design. Minimal. Direct. No excess space. No decoration. We stepped inside. The door sealed behind us. A short pause. Then the ship launched. The journey didn't take long. I stood near the front, looking ahead as the stars shifted outside. Bakey stood slightly behind me. Silent. Controlled. "You're doing fine," I said casually. "Yes," he replied. "Keep it that way," I added. "I will." I nodded once. No more needed. Viltrum came into view. The planet looked exactly how I remembered. Harsh. Controlled. Structured. No wasted space. No unnecessary development. Everything served a purpose. The ship descended smoothly. Landing was immediate. The door opened. I stepped out first. The air felt different. Heavier in a way that didn't matter to me. Bakey followed. We hadn't taken more than a few steps before someone approached. Tall. Broad. Mustache. General Craig. He stopped in front of us, his gaze immediately locking onto Bakey. His expression didn't change much, but there was a clear shift in attention. "Another Viltrumite," he said. I shrugged slightly. "Picked him up on the way here." Craig looked at me briefly, then back at Bakey. No questions directed at me. He stepped forward. Then he attacked. No warning. His fist drove forward, aimed directly at Bakey's head. Bakey moved instantly. He blocked. The impact created a sharp sound through the air. No hesitation. Craig followed with another strike. Bakey countered. The two moved fast. Clean. Direct. No wasted motion. I stepped back slightly, giving them space, watching closely. Craig increased pressure. Bakey matched it. Strike. Block. Counter. The ground beneath them cracked slightly from the force of their movements. Craig's expression shifted just a little. Interest. He pushed harder. Becky held. No visible strain. No hesitation. After several exchanges, Craig stopped. He lowered his arm. Becky did the same. Silence for a second. Craig looked at him directly. "Why did you not report to the Empire sooner?" he asked. Becky didn't pause. "I was lost," he replied evenly. Craig held his gaze. Then he nodded once. "Unfortunate," he said. That was it. No further questioning. He turned slightly. "You will both come with me." I smiled faintly. "Straight to the top." Craig didn't react. "Move." I started walking. Becky followed. The path to Thrag wasn't long. Security was present, but not excessive. Viltrumites didn't rely on numbers anymore. They relied on strength. We entered the chamber. Thrag stood at the center. Still. Focused. Absolute control over his presence. His gaze moved to us immediately. Craig stepped forward. "This is Apex," he said, gesturing toward me. 5 years old. Ready for assignment. Then he gestured to Becky. "Recovered Viltrumite. Claims he was lost." Thrag looked at Becky first. Long enough to evaluate. Then at me. His expression didn't change. 5, he said. I nodded once. "That's what they tell me." A brief pause. Then he spoke again. "You will both be tested." I tilted my head slightly. "Already?" Craig answered before Thrag did. "No Viltrumite is too young," he said flatly. "If you die, you are weak." I looked at him for a second, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough," I said calmly. No hesitation. No resistance. Just acceptance. Thrag stepped forward slightly. "Mission details will be provided," he said. I exhaled lightly. Straight to work. I like it. He didn't respond to that. His attention shifted back to Craig. Then to Becky. Then to me again. Evaluation complete. I stood there, relaxed but attentive. Becky remained still beside me. No signs of anything beyond what we showed. Exactly how it needed to be. Inside, the system continued running. 4 new clones in progress. Everything aligned. Chapter 4, First Field Test. Craig didn't waste time once the decision was made. We stood on the launch platform, the surface beneath us smooth and unmarked. The sky above Viltrum stayed clear, empty except for distant movement that never interfered with anything below. Craig faced us with the same expression he always had. Flat. Direct. No excess. "You will proceed to the designated planet," he said evenly. "Resistance has persisted beyond acceptable limits." I shifted my weight slightly, hands resting loosely at my sides. "So we're the cleanup crew." Craig didn't react to that. "You will eliminate resistance and establish control," he continued. I tilted my head just a bit. "Any specifics? Or are we improvising today?" "Efficiency determines outcome," he replied. Of course it did. I glanced at Becky. He stood still, eyes forward, posture straight. No reaction. No wasted motion. Craig looked at both of us. "Do your job," he said. I gave a small nod. "You could have said that a little nicer." He didn't respond. Not even a glance. I smiled faintly, then stepped forward. "Let's go," I said casually. Becky moved with me. We launched at the same time. The force pushed the air apart instantly as we left Viltrum's surface. No hesitation. No build-up. Just acceleration. Space opened around us quickly. The planet fell behind. The stars stayed fixed, but our position shifted through them at a steady, controlled pace. I adjusted my speed slightly, matching Bakey without needing to look at him directly. "You good?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "Nice. First mission together and all that?" "Yes." I glanced at him briefly. "You're not much of a talker, are you?" "No." "All right," I said lightly. "I'll carry the conversation." He didn't respond. That was fine. The travel took time. A week. Viltrumite flight wasn't instant across distances like this. It was fast, but not enough to skip the passage of time entirely. We maintained pace. No interruptions. No encounters. I used the time to think. The Empire had sent us here for a reason. This wasn't random. If a planet resisted long enough to require direct Viltrumite involvement, there was always something behind it. Strength. Numbers. Environment. Or something unusual. I kept that in mind. Beside me, Bakey remained consistent. No signs of fatigue. No deviation in movement. Good. The planet came into view gradually. At first, just a shape. Then detail. I narrowed my eyes slightly as we approached. "Earth-sized," I said calmly. "Yes," Bakey replied. Surface coverage looked dense. Movement visible even from this distance. I leaned forward slightly, increasing speed just enough to close the gap faster. As we broke into the upper atmosphere, the details sharpened. The entire surface was crawling. "Insects," I said quietly. Bakey didn't respond, but his gaze stayed fixed. They covered everything. Ground. Structures, if you could call them that. Organic formations, layered and uneven. No visible cities in the traditional sense. Everything looked grown rather than built. We descended. No attempt at stealth. No reason for it. The moment we entered lower altitude, they reacted. The ground shifted. Thousands of them moved at once. Winged variants launched upward, heading straight for us. I exhaled lightly. There it is. The first wave hit. They weren't weak. Not compared to normal species. But compared to us. Irrelevant. I moved my arm once. A single strike. Dozens of them broke apart instantly. Bakey moved beside me. His movements were cleaner. Direct. No wasted effort. Each motion resulted in multiple kills. We didn't slow down. We descended through them. Bodies dropped in every direction. Limbs separated. Wings tore. Impact after impact. The air filled with fragments. Within seconds, the initial wave was gone. We landed. The ground beneath my feet shifted slightly. Not unstable. Just, alive. I looked down briefly, then back up. More were coming. Persistent, I said. Yes, Bakey replied. They rushed again. This time from all directions. Ground units. Larger. Heavier. I stepped forward. Punch. Kick. Movement. Each action removed multiple targets. They didn't coordinate well. No structure. Just numbers. Bakey moved past me, then stopped. He looked upward. Then he flew. Straight up. Fast. I watched him go for a second. Then I stepped back slightly, clearing space. The swarm followed him. More and more lifted off the ground, chasing. I crossed my arms loosely, watching. "All right," I said under my breath. "Let's see." Beiki didn't stop. He kept going higher. Then he paused. For a fraction of a second. Still. Then he dropped. Straight down. Acceleration built instantly. Gravity pulled. His own speed added to it. He didn't adjust. He didn't slow. He came down through the swarm like a solid force. Impact. The sound hit a moment later. Everything in his path. Gone. The air cleared in a wide column. Then the shockwave spread outward. More of them broke apart under the pressure. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Not bad. Beiki landed a short distance away. No damage. No change in expression. Area cleared, he said. For about 5 seconds, I replied. The ground moved again. The remains shifted. I looked down. The bodies weren't staying still. They pulled together. Fragments sliding across the surface. Limbs connecting. Mass gathering. I narrowed my eyes slightly. "Oh," I said quietly. "That's why." Beiki turned his head slightly, watching the same thing. The bodies didn't just pile up. They combined. Structure forming. Size increasing. Larger. And larger. I stepped back a few feet, giving it space. "Okay," I said calmly. "That's new." The mass kept growing. It didn't stop at building size. It didn't stop at mountain size. It kept going. I looked up as it rose higher. "Yeah, that explains the resistance," I said. The final form stabilized. A single entity. Massive. Easily the size of a moon. It moved slowly at first. Then its surface shifted, forming something like limbs. Beiki remained still beside me. "Target identified," he said. "Big target," I replied. I rolled my shoulder once, then stepped forward. No point waiting. I launched. Straight toward it. Speed built quickly. I pulled my arm back. Then drove my fist forward into its surface. Impact landed clean. The force traveled through it. I felt the resistance immediately. It didn't break. It didn't even shift much. I pulled back slightly, hovering in place. "All right," I said under my breath. "That's different." The surface moved. Not damaged. Just adjusted. I glanced back at Beiki. "Your turn." He didn't reply. He moved. Faster this time. He struck from the opposite side. Another clean hit. Same result. Minimal movement. No real damage. I exhaled once. "Okay. So we're doing this the long way." The giant moved. One of its limbs swung toward us. Slow compared to us. But large enough to matter. I shifted to the side, avoiding it easily. Beiki did the same. "Coordination?" I asked. "Yes," he replied. "Good." I moved again. This time not aiming for a single strike. Multiple. Rapid. Focused on one area. Hit after hit. Each one landing in the same spot. Beiki mirrored the approach from another angle. The surface began to shift more under repeated impact. Not breaking. But reacting. "Better," I said. The giant adjusted again. More movement now. More resistance. Good. That meant it wasn't invulnerable. Just durable. I pulled back slightly, repositioning. Keep pressure, I said. Yes. We moved again. Together this time. Attacks landing in sequence. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Just force. Chapter 5, Controlled Elimination. I shifted slightly in the air, watching the giant adjust to our attacks. The surface continued to move, but it wasn't recovering fast enough to ignore what we were doing. All right, I said calmly, glancing at Becky. We're changing approach. He looked at me. Repeat your drop, I said. I'll hold it in place. Yes, he replied. I moved immediately. Straight toward the center mass. Not striking, grabbing. My hands pressed into the surface. It resisted, but I pushed through just enough to get a grip. The texture shifted under my fingers, trying to reconfigure. Stay still, I said under my breath, tightening my hold. The giant moved one of its limbs again, slower this time, aiming to push me off. I adjusted my position and drove my foot into it, anchoring myself harder. Now, I said. Becky was already moving. He shot upward again, faster than before. No wasted time. No hesitation. I held the structure steady, applying continuous force, keeping its mass from dispersing too much. A second passed. Then he dropped. The impact hit harder this time. The combination of gravity and his speed drove straight through the center. The mass didn't hold. It split. Cleanly. Two halves separated, drifting apart slightly. I released my grip and pulled back, hovering between them. I looked at both sections. Good, I said calmly. Again. Becky didn't respond. He was already moving. Up again. I positioned myself between the two halves, pushing them closer together. Let's keep this efficient, I said. They tried to reconnect. That worked against them. Becky came down again. Impact. Both halves broke further. 4 sections now. Each one smaller, but still active. Still moving. Still trying to reorganize. I nodded once. Perfect. We repeated it. Again. And again. Each time, I controlled positioning. Each time, Becky delivered the impact. No wasted effort. No deviation. 4 became 8. 8 became 16. The pieces were still alive. Still shifting. But smaller now. Manageable. I looked at the spread of them, floating in the air above the planet. All right, I said, placing my hands on my hips briefly. That's much better. Becky hovered beside me. Next step, he asked. I glanced up toward the nearby star. Close enough. Bright. Stable. That, I said, nodding toward it. He followed my gaze. Understood. I moved first. Grabbing one of the smaller masses. It resisted slightly, trying to pull away, but it didn't have enough structure anymore. I tightened my grip. Let's take out the trash, I said. Then I accelerated. Fast. The distance closed quickly. The heat increased as I approached the star, but it didn't matter. Viltrumite durability handled it without issue. I pushed the mass forward. The moment it crossed into the star, it was gone. No resistance. No return. I pulled back immediately and turned around. Becky was already on his way with another. Good. We didn't speak. No need. We just repeated the process. One by one. 16 trips in total. Each time faster than the last. Each time cleaner. No mistakes. No delays. The final piece disappeared into the star without issue. I hovered there for a second, watching the surface. Nothing came back. No regeneration. No movement. Done, I said quietly. Becky stopped beside me. Yes. I glanced at him briefly, then nodded once. Good work. He didn't respond. That was consistent. We turned at the same time and headed back. The return trip took another week. No interruptions again. No changes. I kept my pace steady, occasionally glancing at Becky. You handled that well, I said at one point. Yes, he replied. I smiled faintly. Confident. I like that. No response. I exhaled lightly through my nose. Still working on the conversation thing, I added. He didn't react. I let it go. Viltrum came back into view. Same as before. Unchanged. We descended quickly. Landing was clean. Craig was already there. Waiting. Of course he was. We stepped forward. Report, he said. Planet cleared, I replied calmly. Resistance eliminated. He looked at Becky briefly. Then back at me. No complications. Just one, I said. They merge into a larger form. We split it and disposed of the pieces. Craig held my gaze for a second. Then he nodded once. Efficient. I try, I said lightly. He turned slightly. You, he said to Becky. You will proceed to your next assignment. Becky didn't hesitate. Understood. I glanced at him briefly. No reaction outwardly. Exactly as planned. Craig looked at me next. You will remain, he said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. No second round. You will train. I tilted my head just a bit. Already handled a planet and now I'm back to drills. Yes. I let out a quiet breath. All right. Fair. No point arguing. Training mattered. Especially here. Craig stepped aside slightly. Move. Becky turned first. He looked at me for a fraction of a second. Nothing obvious. Then he left. I watched him go. Then I shifted my attention back to Craig. Where do you want me? I asked. He started walking. Follow. I fell into step beside him. The training area was open. Wide. No structures in the way. Just space. A few Viltrumites were already there. Not many. Each one engaged in their own routines. Combat. Movement. Impact drills. Craig stopped at the center. You will train here, he said. I looked around slowly. Then back at him. Anyone specific I should be impressing? I asked casually. Improve, he replied. That's the plan. He turned to leave. Then stopped briefly. If you fail, you will be removed, he said flatly. I smiled slightly. Good motivation. He left. I stood there for a second. Then rolled my shoulders once. All right, I muttered. I stepped forward. One of the Viltrumites nearby glanced at me. Older. More experienced. He approached. You are Apex, he said. Depends who's asking, I replied lightly. I am evaluating you. I nodded once. Of course you are. He didn't react. Attack, he said. I smiled faintly. Straight to it. I respect that. I moved. Fast. Closing the distance instantly. My fist drove forward. He blocked. Solid. No movement. Good. He countered immediately. Faster than most I had dealt with so far. I shifted to the side, letting it pass, then struck again. He adjusted. Blocked again. Better than expected, he said. I get that a lot, I replied calmly. We continued. Exchange after exchange. No wasted motion. Each movement precise. Each adjustment immediate. He increased pressure gradually. Testing. I matched it. Not exceeding. Not holding back too much. Just enough. After several exchanges, he stopped. I stepped back slightly. He looked at me. Acceptable, he said. I nodded once. I'll take it. He turned and walked away. I exhaled lightly. Then looked around again. More training. More evaluation. More time. Inside, the system continued. The 4 clones I started earlier were still developing. Stable. No issues. I flexed my hand once. Then stepped forward again. Chapter 6, Violent Instruction. The next day started without announcement. No schedule. No signal. I stepped into the training field the same way I had the day before, shoulders loose, breathing even, eyes scanning the space out of habit rather than need. Viltrum didn't change its pace for anyone. The same open ground stretched out in front of me. A few Viltrumites were already active. Impacts echoed at intervals, spaced out, controlled, each one heavy enough to matter. I rolled my neck once as I walked forward. All right, I said quietly. Round 2. You are late. The voice came from my left. I turned my head slightly. Another Viltrumite stood there. Taller than me. Older. Built heavier. No wasted movement in how he held himself. I looked at him for a second. Then I glanced around. No one gave me a time, I said calmly. You were expected at sunrise. I shrugged lightly. I'll set an alarm next time. He stepped closer. I am assigned to you, he said. Lucky me, I replied with a faint smile. He didn't react. Prepare, he said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. We stretching first, or? He moved. No warning. No build-up. Just immediate force. His fist connected with my face before I could finish the sentence. The impact snapped my head to the side and sent me sliding across the ground. I caught myself quickly, one hand pressing against the surface as I stopped. There was a brief silence in my head. Then everything settled. I straightened slowly, rolling my jaw once. Blood. I tasted it immediately. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and looked at it. All right, I said quietly. So that's the tone. He stood where he was. Waiting. No follow-up. No explanation. Just expectation. I stepped forward again, shoulders relaxing into position. You could have said something, I added lightly. He didn't respond. Attack, he said. I exhaled once. Then I moved. Fast. Closing the distance instantly. I threw a direct strike to his center. He blocked. Solid. No movement. He countered immediately. I barely shifted in time, his fist grazing past my side before I twisted and struck again. He caught that too. Then his knee drove upward into my ribs. The impact landed clean. Something cracked. I felt it. Not enough to stop me, but enough to register. I stepped back, breath tightening for a fraction of a second before stabilizing. Okay, I said under my breath. He didn't give me time. He was already moving again. This time faster. More force behind it. I raised my arms, blocking the first hit, but the second came from a different angle. It connected. Hard. My body lifted off the ground and hit the surface a few meters back. I pushed myself up immediately. No pause. No hesitation. I stepped forward again. You're not holding back, I said calmly. No, he replied. Good, I said. I moved again. This time I adjusted. Less direct. More variation. Feints. Shifts. Timing changes. He adapted instantly. Every attempt I made was met with equal or greater response. I landed a hit. A clean one. To his side. He didn't react beyond acknowledging it. Then his elbow came down across my shoulder. Something tore. My arm dropped slightly. I reset it immediately. All right, I muttered. We continued. Exchange after exchange. Each one harder than the last. Blood started to build. Mine. His too, but less. I could feel my body slowing. Not much. But enough. He noticed. Of course he did. His next strike came faster. I blocked too late. The impact hit my chest and drove the air out of me completely. I staggered back. For a second, my vision blurred. Then it cleared. I forced my breathing back into rhythm. Still standing, I said quietly. He stepped forward again. No, he replied. You are failing. He hit me again. And again. Each strike precise. Each one placed where it would do the most damage. I tried to counter. I did. Some landed. Most didn't matter. He absorbed them. Returned more. Stronger. Faster. My body started to break down. Fractures. Internal damage. Blood loss. I stayed upright. Barely. I swung again. Slower this time. He caught my arm. Then drove his fist into my abdomen. Everything inside me reacted at once. Pain registered. Clear. Sharp. I dropped to one knee. My hand hit the ground to keep me from collapsing completely. Blood hit the surface beneath me. I exhaled slowly, forcing control back into my breathing. Not done, I said quietly. I pushed myself up again. My legs held. For now. I stepped forward. One more strike. It landed. Weak compared to before. But it landed. He looked at me. Then he hit me again. Direct. No adjustment. No restraint. My body lifted off the ground and hit hard. This time I didn't get up immediately. I stayed there for a second. Breathing. Slow. Heavy. Everything hurt. I moved my hand slightly. Tested response. Still there. Good. I pushed myself up again. Slow this time. Controlled. Standing. Barely. I looked at him. Still here, I said, my voice steady. He watched me for a moment. Then he moved again. Faster than before. The final sequence came without pause. Strike after strike. No gaps. No openings. I blocked what I could. Took the rest. My body gave out. I dropped. This time fully. Face down. The ground felt solid. Cold. I could hear my own breathing. Uneven. I tried to push up again. My arm didn't respond properly. I adjusted. Tried again. It moved. Barely. I lifted my head slightly. Blood dripped down. My vision stayed clear enough. He stood over me. No change in expression. No sign of effort. Recover, he said. I let out a quiet breath. Working on it, I replied. He looked down at me. You are weak, he said flatly. I smiled slightly against the ground. Yeah, I said quietly. I got that part. He turned. Started walking away. No further instruction. No assistance. Just expectation. I stayed where I was for a few seconds longer. Then I moved. Slow. Controlled. I rolled onto my back. The sky above stayed the same. Clear. Unchanging. I lifted one hand slightly. Still functional. Good. Inside. My body was already working. Viltrumite recovery. Slow compared to the damage I took, but active. I let out another breath. Then pushed myself up again. This time sitting. All right, I muttered. I stayed there, letting my breathing stabilize. No one came over. No one checked. That was normal. I wiped the blood from my face with the back of my hand. Then looked at it. A lot. I nodded once. Noted. I leaned forward, placing my elbows on my knees briefly. Then stood. Slowly. My legs held. Barely. But enough. I took a step. Then another. Each movement deliberate. No rush. No wasted energy. Inside, the 4 clones continued developing. Stable. Unaffected. Good. I exhaled lightly. Could have gone worse, I said under my breath. Then I walked. Chapter 7, Controlled Expansion. 5 years passed again. This time, it didn't feel slow. It moved in cycles. Training. Missions. Recovery. Repeat. No breaks. No wasted time. Viltrumite life didn't allow for it. I sat on the edge of the bed in my assigned room inside the outpost, leaning forward slightly, forearms resting on my thighs. The room was simple. Same as always. Clean. Functional. No distractions. I looked down at my hands. Scars? Not permanent. Most had already healed. But I remembered each one. Every near-death moment. Every mission where things didn't go clean. There were a few. More than a few. Each time, the outcome stayed the same. I survived. Not always on my own. Becky had stepped in more than once. Last-second intervention. No hesitation. No wasted movement. I exhaled lightly. Yeah, I muttered. That tracks. I leaned back slightly, rolling my shoulder once. Those missions explained a lot. Why the numbers stayed low. Why the Empire didn't grow like it used to. This wasn't a system where survival was guaranteed. It was earned every time. I shook my head once. Focus, I said quietly. I stood up. Today mattered. I could feel it internally before I even checked. The 4 clones were ready. I placed my hand lightly against my abdomen and activated the release. Same process as before. controlled, clean. No pain. Just pressure. Then one. Then another. Then another. Then the fourth. They formed in front of me one after the other, each stabilizing quickly, their bodies settling into full structure within seconds. 4 Viltrumites. All different in posture immediately. I looked at them one by one. "All right," I said calmly. "Let's get introductions out of the way." The first one stood straight. Still. Focused. His eyes locked forward without shifting. "Rin," I said. He gave a small nod. "Understood." His tone was flat. Direct. No extra. I moved to the next. He looked around immediately, taking in everything, his posture more relaxed, eyes moving more than the others. "Isagi," I said. He smiled slightly. "Got it. More expressive." "Good." The third one. He was already sitting. No rush. No urgency. Eyes half-lidded. "Nagi," I said. He looked up slowly. "Yet. Lazy." Exactly as expected. The last one stood with his arms crossed, posture firm, eyes sharp, already scanning the others like he was measuring them. "Baru," I said. He smirked slightly. "Took long enough." I nodded once. "Good," I said. "Everyone's online." I stepped back slightly, looking at all 4 together. No instability. No visible flaws. All functional. I smiled faintly. Solid batch. The door opened. Bakey stepped in. No announcement. He stopped immediately when he saw the 4. His eyes moved across them once. No reaction beyond that. "You created more," he said. "Yeah," I replied casually. "Upgraded production." He stepped closer, observing them again. "They are stable," he said. "Of course they are," I replied lightly. "I don't do half-finished work." Isagi tilted his head slightly, looking between us. "So this is Bakey?" he asked. "Yes," I said. Bakey looked at him. Isagi smiled. "You've got a reputation." Bakey didn't respond. Baru clicked his tongue. "He doesn't talk much, does he?" "No," I said. "You'll get used to it." Nagi lay back fully now, staring at the ceiling. "Sounds tiring." Rin stayed still. Watching. Processing. Bakey looked at me again. "What is their purpose?" he asked. "Same as you," I said calmly. "Work. Missions. Growth." He nodded once. "Then they require training." "Exactly," I said. "That's where you come in." He didn't react. Just accepted it. I gestured toward the 4. "Take them. Run them through everything. Don't hold back." Baru smirked. "Good." I was getting bored already. Isagi stretched his arms slightly. "I'm curious how strong everyone is." Nagi didn't move. "Do we have to start now?" "Yes," Bakey said. "Flat. Immediate." Nagi sighed. "Yeah, figured." Rin stepped forward first. "We begin." Bakey turned. They followed. All 4. No hesitation from Rin. Isagi followed with interest. Baru walked like he owned the place. Nagi dragged himself along. I watched them leave. Then exhaled lightly. "All right," I said quietly. I looked down at my hand again. Then pressed my thumb into my palm. Cut. Blood surfaced. I didn't stop. Inside. The system activated again. This time. 10. The strain increased. Noticeable. But manageable. I adjusted the output carefully. Let's not push too hard, I muttered. The egg lab processed the samples. Formation began. Slower than before due to volume. But stable. I sealed the cut and let my hand heal. Then leaned back slightly against the wall. Now came the problem. I closed my eyes briefly. How do I explain 4 new Viltrumites? I said under my breath. There was no easy answer. The Empire didn't just accept random additions. Everything was tracked. Everything was accounted for. 4 appearing out of nowhere. That would get attention. Unwanted attention. I pushed off the wall and stepped out of the room. The training area inside the outpost was active. Bakey stood at the center. The 4 surrounded him. Already moving. Rin attacked first. Direct. Clean. Bakey blocked without effort. Isagi moved next, trying a different angle. Bakey adjusted instantly. Baru came in harder. More force. Bakey met it head-on. Nagi was slower. He moved last. Still effective, but without urgency. I watched for a few seconds. Then stepped in. Pause, I said calmly. They stopped. All 5 looked at me. I crossed my arms loosely. We have a logistics problem, I said. Isagi tilted his head. Sounds serious. It is, I replied. Baru frowned slightly. What kind? You 4, I said. Don't exist. Nagi blinked slowly. That sounds inconvenient. Rin spoke. We require integration. Exactly, I said. Bakey stayed silent. Listening. I paced slightly in front of them. Right now, if I walk you into Viltrum and say hey, found these guys, it's not going to work. Isagi nodded. Yeah, that makes sense. Baru crossed his arms tighter. So what's the plan? That's what we're figuring out, I said. Rin looked at me. We can remain here. That was my first thought, I said. Bakey spoke. This outpost is under my authority. They can remain without issue. I nodded slightly. That works short term, I said. Isagi scratched the back of his head. But not forever. Exactly, I replied. Baru frowned. So we wait. Nagi yawned slightly. Waiting sounds fine. I stopped pacing. Then paused. A thought settled in. I looked at them again. Then at Bakey. No, I said. They all focused on me. We're not waiting. Rin narrowed his eyes slightly. Then. I spoke calmly. You're going to Thraxa. Isagi blinked. Thraxa. Bakey looked at me. He understood immediately. Hybridization, he said. Yeah, I replied. Baru frowned. Explain. Thraxan blood accelerates growth, I said. You mix that in, future production speeds up. Isagi nodded slowly. So we get stronger numbers faster. Exactly, I said. Nagi looked mildly interested now. That's less waiting. I like that. Rin spoke. Location. Unknown to most, I said. You'll have to search. Baru smirked slightly. Good. Something to do. Bakey looked at me. They will be gone for an extended period. I know, I said. I looked at the 4. Find the planet. Secure samples. Don't draw attention you can't handle. Rin nodded. Understood. Sajai smiled slightly. Sounds fun. Baru cracked his knuckles. About time. Nagi stood up slowly. All right, fine. I stepped closer. Remember, I said calmly. You don't know each other in public. You don't know me. Rin nodded. Yes. Got it, Sajai said. Baru didn't respond, but his expression didn't change. Nagi gave a small nod. Baiki stepped back slightly. They will be ready, he said. I know, I replied. I looked at the four one last time. Move. They didn't hesitate. All four launched. Gone within seconds. I stood there, watching the empty space they left behind. Then exhaled lightly. All right, I said quietly. Chapter 8, Unexpected Interception. 5 more years passed. This time, the difference showed. Not in hesitation. Not in mindset. In presence. I stood in the outpost corridor, adjusting the cuff of my Viltrumite uniform slightly, my posture relaxed but stable. My body had fully caught up now. Height. Frame. Density. Everything matched a full-grown Viltrumite. No one questioned it. They didn't track age the same way. They tracked results. And mine were consistent. Behind me, Baiki walked at a steady pace. Same as always. No wasted motion. No unnecessary expression. You ready? I asked casually. Yes, he replied. Good, I said. Let's keep this one simple. We exited the outpost together. The mission itself was routine. A planet flagged for resistance. Not special. Not unusual. We landed without announcement. The locals reacted immediately. Poor decision. I stepped forward, rolling my shoulder once. Let's get through this, I said calmly. Baiki didn't respond. We moved. Fast. The first wave didn't last more than a few seconds. They weren't weak by their own standards. But against us, it didn't matter. I moved through them cleanly. Strikes placed where they ended things immediately. No wasted effort. Baiki handled the rest. Direct. Efficient. No deviation. Within minutes, organized resistance collapsed. The rest scattered. I looked around briefly, scanning the area. Yeah, I said quietly. That's done. Baiki stood beside me. General Craig will arrive to finalize control, he said. Of course he will, I replied. I wiped a small amount of blood from my hand, not mine. Then. A signal. I paused. Internal. Rin. I focused. Message received. Location confirmed. Thraxa. I smiled slightly. Well, I said, turning my head toward Baiki. Plans just changed. He looked at me. Explain. They found it, I said. Thraxa. He nodded once. Then we move. Exactly, I said. No delay. No report needed yet. Craig would handle cleanup. We launched. Mid-flight, I felt the shift. The 10 clones. Ready. I slowed slightly, then activated the release. One after another, they emerged behind me in controlled formation. All stable. All fully developed. I glanced back briefly. Welcome to the field, I said casually. No names assigned yet. Didn't matter. They would follow. They adjusted immediately, matching speed. Becky didn't react. Expected. You're getting used to this, I said lightly. Yes, he replied. I'll take that as approval. No response. I faced forward again. Don't make more yet, I muttered to myself. Let's get the upgrade first. Thraxan DNA. That was the goal. Faster cycles. More output. Better scaling. We continued. The planet came into view. Thrax saw. I recognized it instantly. The terrain. The atmosphere. Everything matched. I slowed slightly. Stay tight, I said. The group adjusted formation. We descended. As we approached, I saw them. 4. Baru stood at the front, arms slightly tense, eyes sharp. I Sajai beside him, scanning upward. Nagi hovering slightly behind, posture loose. Rin standing still, focused. I landed first. Becky beside me. The 10 behind us. Baru smirked slightly. Took you long enough. Had a job, I replied calmly. I Sajai smiled a bit. You look different. 5 years, I said. It happens. Nagi yawned slightly. This place is annoying. Rin stepped forward. There are 2 Viltrumites on this planet, he said. I paused. 2. I repeated. Yes. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Then it clicked. Timing. Mark. Nolan. I exhaled lightly through my nose. Of course, I muttered. Baru frowned. You know them. I know enough, I said. Sajai tilted his head. So what's the plan? I looked at Rin. Why didn't you move already? He answered immediately. Unknown variables. We waited for your input. I nodded once. Good call. Becky stood silent beside me. I looked at all of them. All right, I said calmly. We're going down. No delay. No hesitation. I launched. They followed. All of them. We broke through the atmosphere quickly. The planet's surface came into clear view. Movement below. Structures. Thraxans. Before we could land, 2 figures intercepted. Fast. Direct. They stopped in front of us. Nolan. Mark. I slowed to a stop. The others held position behind me. Nolan looked at all of us. His expression stayed controlled, but his eyes moved quickly, assessing numbers, positioning. Mark hovered slightly behind him. Tense. Confused. Ready. Nolan spoke first. Are you here to capture me? He asked calmly. I watched him. Then he paused. His gaze shifted slightly. He was thinking. If we were here for that, we would have already attacked. He understood that. Mark looked between us, his expression tight. What's going on? He asked. I stepped forward slightly. Relaxed posture. No aggression. Easy, I said calmly. Nolan didn't move. Mark stayed ready. I looked at both of them. We're not here for that, I said. Nolan narrowed his eyes slightly. Then why are you here? I glanced down briefly toward the planet. Then back at him. I just need a few Thraxans, I said evenly. Mark blinked. What? I kept my tone steady. We come in peacefully, I continued. We take what we need. Then we leave. Nolan watched me closely. And if we refuse? He asked. I shrugged slightly. Then more people die, I said calmly. Mark's expression tightened. Nolan didn't respond immediately. He just looked at me. Then at the others behind me. Counting. Evaluating. Becky remained still. Rin stood focused. Baru looked ready. Isagi watched everything. Nagi looked uninterested. The 10 behind us held formation. I kept my expression neutral. Waiting. No rush. No pressure beyond what was already clear. The air stayed still between us. No one moved. No one attacked. Just a pause. Chapter 9, Terms of Exchange. The tension didn't break. It shifted. Nolan watched me for another second, then turned slightly. We'll talk, he said calmly. Mark looked at him immediately. Wait. It's fine, Nolan replied. Mark didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue further. I gave a small nod. Good. That saves time. I gestured slightly behind me without turning. Stay here. Becky didn't respond. He didn't need to. Rin, Baru, Isagi, Nagi, and the others held position. No movement. No interference. I followed Nolan down toward the surface. Mark stayed close behind him. We landed near one of the larger structures. The Thraxans scattered slightly at our arrival, their movements quick, their voices layered in a language I didn't need to understand. Nolan walked forward without hesitation. I followed. Mark stayed behind him, his eyes still moving between me and the sky above. We entered a structure. Inside was simple. Organic construction. Smooth, curved walls. No sharp edges. Everything looked grown instead of built. Nolan stopped at the center. I stepped in fully. Mark remained near the entrance, still watching me. For a second, no one spoke. Then I broke it. All right, I said calmly. Let's keep this clean. Nolan crossed his arms. Explain exactly what you want, he said. I nodded once. 200 Thraxans, I said. Volunteers. Mark frowned immediately. Volunteers. Yes, I replied. Nolan didn't interrupt. I continued. They leave with us. No damage to the planet. No conflict. We take them, we go. Mark stepped forward slightly. And what happens to them? I looked at him. They get used, I said simply. His expression tightened. For what? He asked. I shrugged slightly. Doesn't matter for this conversation. It does to me, he replied. I tilted my head just a bit. That's fair. Still not relevant. Nolan watched both of us. Then he spoke. You have 15 Viltrumites with you, he said. I didn't respond immediately. He continued. That's not standard deployment, he added. Where did they come from? I looked at him. Then I gave a small, almost casual shrug. Does that change the matter? I asked. He held my gaze. A pause. Then. No, he said. Good, I replied. I shifted my weight slightly. So we're back to the part that matters, I said. 200. You say yes, we leave. Mark looked between us. You're just going to take people, he asked. I looked at him again. I'm asking, I said calmly. That's not really asking, he replied. I smiled faintly. It's the version that works. Nolan exhaled slowly. Then he turned. I'll gather volunteers, he said. Mark looked at him. You're serious? Yes, Nolan replied. Mark shook his head slightly, but didn't push further. Nolan walked toward the exit. Before stepping out, he paused briefly, then continued. The door closed behind him. Silence. Mark and I stood in the room. He didn't relax. Not even slightly. I looked around briefly, then leaned back against the wall. You're from Earth, I said casually. He frowned. Yet. How is it? I asked. He blinked. What? Earth, I repeated. Still standing. He stared at me for a second. Yet, why wouldn't it be? I shrugged lightly. Things happen. He didn't respond immediately. Then he crossed his arms. Why do you care? He asked. I don't, I said calmly. Just making conversation. He didn't look convinced. That's a weird way to do it, he said. I've been told that, I replied. A small pause. Then I looked at him again. Let me ask you something, I said. He didn't answer, but he didn't stop me. You're not with them, I said. The Empire. No, he replied immediately. Not even a little. I asked. No, he said again. I nodded slightly. All right, I said. What if that changes things? He frowned. What do you mean? I kept my tone even. What if your choice leads to your race going extinct? I asked. His expression hardened. That's not going to happen, he said. Hypothetically, I replied. I still wouldn't side with them, he said firmly. I watched him for a second. No hesitation. No doubt. Consistent. I let out a quiet breath. Stubborn, I said lightly. Or maybe I just know what they are, he replied. That too, I said. I shifted slightly, about to respond. The door opened. Nolan returned. Behind him. Movement. A lot of it. I straightened. Mark turned immediately. Outside, gathered. Thraxans. More than I asked for. I stepped past Nolan and looked out. Count. Quick. Roughly 500. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Overachieving, I said. Nolan looked at me. They volunteered, he said. I nodded once. Works for me. Mark looked at the crowd, then back at Nolan. His expression was tight, but he didn't speak. I stepped forward. Then turned slightly. Move, I said. Above. The others descended. Baki first. Then Rin. Baru. Isagi. Nagi. The 10 followed behind them. They landed around the perimeter, forming a controlled zone. The Thraxans didn't panic. They stayed grouped. Watching. Waiting. I gestured toward the ships. Load them, I said. No hesitation. Rin moved first, directing the Thraxans efficiently. Baru took a more forceful approach, guiding movement with presence alone. Isagi spoke to them more, keeping things organized. Nagi moved slower, but still effective. The 10 clones followed instructions without deviation. Baki oversaw everything. No interference needed. I stood near the center, watching. Nolan stayed nearby. Mark remained slightly behind him. This is it? Mark asked. For now, I replied. He looked like he wanted to say more. He didn't. The process didn't take long. Ships filled. One by one. No resistance. No conflict. Just movement. Once the last group was loaded, the ships began lifting off. I stepped toward the final one. Bakey looked at me briefly. "Return to base," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "I'll be right behind you." He nodded once. Then launched with the others. One by one, the ships left. I stayed behind a second longer. Then stepped into the last one. The door closed. The ship lifted. We broke through the atmosphere quickly. The planet shrinking below. I stood near the viewing panel, arms loosely at my sides. Quiet. Then. Movement. I looked back. Far below. Multiple figures. Fast. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Recognition came immediately. 3 Viltrumites. Vidor. Thula. Lucan. They engaged instantly. Nolan moved to intercept. Mark followed. The fight started without delay. Even from this distance, I could see the impact. The speed. The force. I watched. Silent. The ship continued to move away. The distance increased. But I kept my gaze fixed on the planet. On the fight. On how it played out. Chapter 10, Scaled Production. I kept watching the fight for a second longer. Nolan moved first. Direct. No hesitation. Mark followed behind him, slower, but committed. Vidor closed distance immediately. Thula circled. Lucan came in from above. Clean formation. Efficient. I exhaled lightly. "Yeah," I said under my breath. "That's going exactly how I remember." I didn't move. Didn't turn the ship around. Didn't interfere. The Thraxans were already loaded. The mission I chose mattered more. I shifted my stance slightly, stepping away from the viewing panel. "Not my problem," I said quietly. The ship continued forward. Distance increased. The fight disappeared from view. The return trip stayed quiet. No interruptions. No signals. The Thraxans stayed contained in the lower sections of the ships. Calm. No panic. No resistance. I checked in once. They looked at me with the same expressions I had seen before. Relief. And something else. I knew what it was. They didn't volunteer because they wanted to leave. They volunteered so we would. I leaned against the wall of the ship briefly. "Fair trade," I said quietly. No one responded. Bakey's outpost came into view. Same as before. Clean. Controlled. Functional. We descended. Landing was smooth. The doors opened. The Thraxans were guided out first. Rin directed movement. Precise. Efficient. Baru pushed the slower ones forward with presence alone. Isagi spoke to them, keeping them organized. Nagi walked behind them, hands in his pockets, eyes half open. "This is a lot of work," he muttered quietly. Bakey stood at the front. Watching. No wasted movement. The 10 clones maintained structure. Everything moved quickly. Within hours. An outpost was built. Not complex. But stable. Shelter. Containment. Control. I walked through it slowly, hands in my pockets, scanning everything. "Not bad," I said. Bakey stood beside me. "It will hold," he said. "Good," I replied. I turned toward the Thraxans. They gathered quickly when I approached. Respectful. Calm. Too calm. I looked over them briefly. Then pointed at one. You, I said. He stepped forward immediately. Yes, he asked nervously. I looked at him for a second. Come here, I said. He moved closer. I kept my tone even. I need a liter of blood, I said. He froze slightly. Then his expression shifted. Nervous. That's too much, he said quickly. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Really? I asked. He nodded fast. Yes. That's too much. I looked at him for another second. Then I glanced around at the others. Amount 500 of you, I said calmly. You can't get even 1 liter. He blinked. Then paused. Then laughed nervously. Oh, I thought you meant from only me, he said quickly. I chuckled lightly. No, I said. I'm not doing that. He relaxed immediately. Oh, he said. Yes, we can do that. Good, I replied. I turned slightly, walking a few steps. Spread it out, I added. No one gets drained too much. Yes, he said. The others nodded. No resistance. No complaints. I stopped walking and glanced back at them briefly. I could take more. Push harder. They wouldn't fight back. I knew that. But there was no need. Efficiency didn't require excess. I turned away. Get it done, I said. The system ran quietly in the background. 10 clones still developing. Stable. Now with incoming Thraxan input soon. That would change things. I walked back into the main structure of the outpost. Rin stood near the center. Collection is organized, he said. Good, I replied. Baru leaned against a wall. They're too easy, he said. No resistance at all. They're not built for it, I said. He scoffed slightly. Doesn't matter. Isagi looked at me. They agreed fast, he said. They wanted us gone, I replied. He nodded slowly. Yet. Nagi sat on the floor nearby. I'm going to sleep, he said. You just woke up, Baru replied. Still tired, Nagi said. I smiled faintly. Go ahead, I said. He didn't wait. He just lay back and closed his eyes. Baki stood near the entrance. Blood collection will be complete by morning, he said. Perfect, I replied. I turned toward my room. Wake me when it's ready. Yes, he said. The next day. A knock. Light. I opened one eye. Then the other. Silence for a second. Then another knock. I sat up slowly, running a hand through my hair. Yeah, I said. The door opened slightly. Nagi stood there. Half asleep. There's someone outside, he said. Then he muttered quietly, can't they knock later in the day, it's only 11 a.m. I smirked slightly. Hard life, I said. He didn't respond. Just turned and walked away. I stood up, stretching once. Then stepped out. Outside, one of the Thraxans stood holding a container. Careful. Respectful. He stepped forward when he saw me. This is what you requested, he said. I took the container. Weight checked out. Volume looked right. Good, I said. He nodded. No one was harmed, he added quickly. I didn't expect them to be, I replied. He relaxed slightly. I turned and walked back inside. Back in my room, I set the container down. Opened it. Blood. Thraxin. I looked at it for a second. Then at my hand. I pressed my thumb into my palm. Cut. Blood surfaced. I held it over the container. Let it mix. Slow. Controlled. Let's see how this scales, I said quietly. Inside. The system activated. This time. Different. The input adjusted immediately. The process shifted. More efficient. Faster. I focused. Output. 25. I paused slightly. Then nodded. Yeah, I said quietly. That's better. The egg lab processed everything. Faster than before. Smoother. Less strain. I leaned back slightly, watching the internal progression. All right, I muttered. The next stage had started. Chapter 11, Uninvited Guest. A week passed. The outpost changed. Not structurally at first. That came later. What changed immediately was the atmosphere. The Thraxans settled in fast. Too fast. I walked through the expanded section of the base, hands resting loosely at my sides, watching them move. They worked together without being told. Organized themselves. Built additional structures with materials we provided. Clean. Efficient in their own way. They smiled more. Talked more. No fear in their movements anymore. One of them waved at me as I passed. I gave a small nod back. Comfortable already, I muttered. Behind me, Isagi walked alongside, looking around with interest. They adapt fast, he said. They don't have a choice, I replied calmly. Still, he added, most species would take longer. I shrugged slightly. They're built different. We passed a group carrying supplies. Baru stood nearby, arms crossed, watching them. They're too soft, he said. They're useful, I replied. That's not the same thing, he said. It doesn't have to be, I answered. He clicked his tongue but didn't argue further. Nagi sat on a raised platform nearby, lying on his back, one arm over his eyes. This is way better than fighting all the time, he said lazily. Rin stood a short distance away, observing everything in silence. Beiki remained near the perimeter, monitoring. Control was stable. Inside. The 25 clones were developing. Fast. Faster than anything before. I could feel it clearly. Growth accelerated beyond expectation. I leaned slightly against a support beam, closing my eyes for a second. Yeah, I said quietly. That's a big upgrade. More than 10 times faster. No instability. No rejection. Everything clean. I opened my eyes again. Good, I added. Then. A shift. Subtle. But clear. I straightened slightly. Someone's coming, I said. Rin turned immediately. Distance, he asked. Close, I replied. Beiki looked up toward the sky. The others followed. A second later. He appeared. Fast. Direct. No attempt to hide it. He landed hard just outside the main structure. The ground cracked slightly under the impact. Conquest. I stepped forward slowly, eyes fixed on him. He stood up straight, brushing a bit of dust from his shoulder like it didn't matter. His gaze moved across the area. Then stopped. On us. Multiple Viltrumites. Unknown. Not reacting the way he expected. His expression shifted slightly. Not confusion. Interest. He stepped forward. Beiki moved to meet him. They stood face to face. "I'll be staying here for the night," Conquest said calmly. Beiki didn't respond immediately. Just looked at him. Then gave a short nod. "Understood," he said. Conquest's gaze moved again. Across Rin. Baru. Isagi. Nagi. Then me. He smiled slightly. "This is new," he said. I tilted my head just a bit. "Depends on your definition," I replied. He chuckled lightly. "I like it," he said. Of course he did. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped back slightly. Then looked at the others. A small motion. That was enough. We moved. No warning. No build-up. Just action. Rin first. Fast. Direct. Baru followed immediately. Aggressive. Isagi moved with precision. Nagi pushed off the ground slower, but still joined. 2 more clones closed in from the sides. I moved last. Conquest reacted instantly. His smile widened. "Finally," he said. He met Rin's strike head-on. Blocked. Countered. Baru came in from the side. Conquest took the hit and returned one harder. Isagi adjusted angles, forcing him to shift. Nagi followed through with a delayed strike that still connected. I entered the exchange. Direct. Focused. We didn't give him space. Not a second. Every time he moved, someone was already there. Every time he struck, someone absorbed it or redirected it. He laughed once. Short. Sharp. "This is better," he said. He pushed harder. More force. More speed. But it didn't change the outcome. Too many angles. Too much pressure. We didn't stop. We didn't slow. 5 minutes. That's all it took. A moon. Nearby. Empty. Quiet. Conquest lay on the surface, blood visible, breathing steady but heavy. I stood a few steps away, looking down at him. The others stood around. No one spoke for a second. Then I exhaled lightly. "All right," I said. Conquest let out a low laugh. "That was fun," he said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. "You're welcome." He turned his head slightly, looking at me. "You're not normal," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "I get that a lot." I crouched slightly, resting my forearms on my knees. "Here's the deal," I said calmly. "You don't tell the Empire about this." He spat out blood to the side. "That's it?" he asked. "That's it," I replied. He laughed again. "I wasn't going to tell them anyway," he said. I watched him for a second. Then nodded. "Good," I said. I stood up. "Then we're on the same page." I turned. "Let's move," I added. We brought him back. No resistance. He walked on his own. Still smiling slightly. The Thraxans froze when they saw him. Fear. Clear. Immediate. I waved one of them over. "You," I said. He approached carefully. "Yes?" he asked nervously. "Food," I said, nodding toward Conquest. He nodded quickly. "Yes." He moved fast. Conquest sat down without being told. Relaxed. Like none of this mattered. I watched him for a second. Then turned to Beiki. "Go back to the moon," I said. He looked at me. "Retrieve his blood." "Yes," he replied. No hesitation. He launched immediately. I turned back. Conquest had already started eating. Calm. Unbothered. I crossed my arms loosely. You're taking this well, I said. He looked up at me. I've had worse days, he replied. Fair, I said. He took another bite. Then spoke again. You've got something interesting here, he said. I know, I replied. He smiled slightly. I like it, he added. I nodded once. Good, I said. I stood there, watching him eat, while inside. The 25 clones continued to grow. Faster. Stronger. And now, with another upgrade coming. Chapter 12, Assigned Identities. The next day started quiet. No alarms. No interruptions. No sudden arrivals crashing into the ground. I stood outside the main structure, looking up at the sky for a second, then lowered my gaze. Peaceful, I said quietly. Behind me, footsteps approached. I didn't turn. He left, Bakey said. Yeah, I replied. Figured he would. Conquest didn't stay longer than he needed to. That wasn't his style. He came, fought, ate, and moved on. No attachments. No questions that mattered. I rolled my shoulder once. Didn't cause problems on the way out? I asked. No, Bakey said. Good, I replied. I turned slightly, walking forward. Means we don't have to clean anything up. Bakey didn't respond. He walked with me. The base was already active. Thraxans moved through their routines. Organized. Efficient. No fear. They had settled fully now. I walked past a few of them. One nodded respectfully. I gave a small nod back. Still cooperating, I said. Yes, Bakey replied. Good, I said. We stepped into the training area. Rin stood at the center. Baru faced him. Isagi circled slightly. Nagi sat off to the side, watching without moving. The 10 clones stood nearby. Silent. Waiting. I stopped a few steps away. Pause, I said. They stopped immediately. All eyes shifted to me. I looked at the 10. Still unnamed. That didn't work anymore. You guys need names, I said. One of them stepped forward slightly. Designation is sufficient, he said. I shook my head once. No, I replied. That's boring. Baru smirked slightly. Finally something interesting. Isagi smiled a bit. Yeah, this should be good. Nagi didn't move. Wake me when it's over. I ignored that. I stepped closer to the 10, looking at each of them carefully. Each one had already developed slight differences in posture. Behavior. Focus. That made it easier. I pointed to the first one. Calm. Controlled. Watching everything. You, I said. Itaki. He didn't react much. Just nodded once. Understood, he said quietly. I moved to the next. He stood still, but his gaze felt different. Observing in a way that wasn't direct. You're Zetsu, I said. He tilted his head slightly. Accepted, he replied. I moved on. The next one. His posture was looser, but his eyes were sharp. Focused. Calculating. Obito, I said. He smiled faintly. Got it. Baru let out a small scoff. He looks too relaxed for that name. Relax, I said casually. He'll grow into it. Baru crossed his arms but didn't argue. I stepped to the next. This one stood with a slight forward lean, like he was always ready to move. You're hidden, I said. He grinned slightly. Sounds good. I raised an eyebrow. That one fits. I nodded once and moved on. The next stood completely still. No extra movement. Focused. Pain, I said. He nodded. Understood. No emotion. Clean. I stepped to the next. She stood slightly apart from the others. Calm. Observant. Konan, I said. She gave a small nod. Yes. I continued. The next one had a heavier stance. More grounded. Kakuzu, I said. He looked at me briefly. Accepted. I moved again. The next one. Sharp posture. Focused. Almost rigid. Sasori, I said. He didn't respond verbally. Just nodded once. That was enough. I stepped to the second to last. His presence stood out more. Confidence. Control. Madara, I said. He smiled slightly. Of course, he replied. Baru let out a short laugh. That one thinks he's special already. Let him, I said lightly. Then I stepped to the last. Younger in behavior compared to the others. But still sharp. Suzuki, I said. He looked at me. Then nodded. Understood. I stepped back. All 10 stood in front of me now. Named. Identified. I crossed my arms loosely. Better, I said. Isagi clapped once lightly. That's way easier to remember. Nagi spoke without opening his eyes. Still too many. Baru looked at the group. Let's see if they can actually fight. Rin remained silent. Watching. Beiki stepped forward slightly. They require structured training, he said. Yeah, I replied. That's your department. He nodded once. I looked at the 10 again. All right, I said. Quick rules. They focused. You don't stand out unless I say so, I continued. You don't talk more than necessary. You don't question in front of others. Itaka nodded. Yes, he said. Madara spoke next. And if we are challenged, he asked. I smiled faintly. Then you win, I said. He nodded. Understood. Haiden grinned. That part I like. Zetsu remained still. Observing. Obito leaned slightly to the side. Sounds simple enough. Kakuzu crossed his arms. Efficiency matters. Exactly, I said. I turned slightly, pacing once. Right now, you stay here, I added. Train. Improve. Don't attract attention. Suzuki spoke. For how long? He asked. Until I say otherwise, I replied. He nodded once. Understood. Konan looked at Beiki briefly. He will oversee. Yes, I said. She accepted that immediately. Pain remained silent. Still. Focused. I stopped pacing and looked at all of them again. No mistakes, I said. None, Rin said from behind them. I glanced at him briefly. Good, I replied. Baru stepped forward slightly. So when do we test them? He asked. I smirked a little. You're already thinking about that. Of course, he said. I looked back at the 10. Soon, I said. Let them stabilize first. Baru clicked his tongue but stepped back. Nagi shifted slightly on the ground. Wake me when they're ready. Isagi laughed a little. You're always asleep. Efficient energy use, Nagi replied. I shook my head once. Unbelievable, I said quietly. Later. I stood alone near the edge of the outpost. Looking out. The system inside me continued. 25 clones. Still growing. Still stable. Now with Thraxan influence. And soon. Conquest's blood would be added. I exhaled lightly. Yeah, I said under my breath. This is scaling. Behind me, footsteps approached. Bakey. The new units have begun training, he said. Good, I replied. No instability detected, he added. Expected, I said. He paused. Then spoke again. Their behavior varies. I know, I replied. That's intentional. He accepted that without question. I turned slightly. Keep pushing them, I said. Don't go easy. I won't, he said. I smiled faintly. I know. Back inside. The 10 were already moving. Training. Testing. Adapting. Itaki observed more than he acted. Zetsu stayed quiet. Obito adjusted quickly. Haiden pushed aggressively. Pain remained controlled. Konan precise. Kakuzu efficient. Sasori focused. Madara confident. Suzuki sharp. I watched for a moment. Then turned away. Everything was in motion. Exactly how it needed to be. Chapter 13, Quiet Leverage. The decision came quickly. No delay. No second guessing. I stood in my room for a moment, adjusting the collar of my uniform slightly, then exhaled once. All right, I said quietly. Let's go talk to the boss. The system inside me continued running. 25 clones. Stable. Accelerating. No interruptions. No issues. Good. I stepped out of the room and moved through the outpost. The Thraxans were already active, moving in groups, carrying supplies, organizing themselves without needing direction. One of them paused when I passed. Good morning, he said politely. I nodded once. Morning. No further conversation. No need. I exited the structure and launched. Viltrum came into view after sustained flight. Same as always. Controlled. Still. Untouched by anything unnecessary. I landed without announcement. No guards stopped me. No one questioned my presence. At this point, I had earned enough space to move. I walked directly toward the main structure. Inside, movement stayed minimal. Viltrumites passed by, focused, not wasting time looking around. I didn't stop. Didn't slow. I reached the chamber. Thrag stood at the center. Still. Focused. Everything about him stayed controlled. I stepped forward. I need to speak with you privately, I said calmly. His eyes shifted slightly toward me. You can speak here, he replied. I smiled faintly. Arga, I started. That was enough. His expression didn't change, but the room did. He turned. Follow, he said. I nodded once. Of course. We walked. No guards followed. No interruptions. He led me into a separate chamber. The door closed behind us. Silence settled. I stepped forward a bit, hands loosely at my sides. Then I smiled slightly. Do you know Nolan is Argal's direct descendant? I asked. Thrag didn't move. Not even slightly. His gaze stayed fixed on me. What proof do you have? He asked evenly. I shrugged lightly. I don't, I said. A pause. Then I continued. But once the others find out, I added calmly, they'll follow him. No reaction. I kept going. They'll betray you, I said. Not out of strategy. Out of instinct. Thrag's eyes didn't shift. They'll become weak, I added. I tilted my head slightly. And you don't like weak, I said. Silence. He studied me. Not emotionally. Just evaluating. I stepped a little closer. Here's the problem, I said. You're strong enough to lead. But they're not strong enough to stay consistent. I let that sit for a second. Then I smiled again. I found a solution, I said. That got his attention. Not visibly. But I could tell. A small group, I continued. Pure-blooded. Not tied to Argal. Not tied to Nolan. Thrag finally spoke. What do you want? He asked. Straight to it. I nodded slightly. Cooperation, I said. No hesitation. No build-up. Just the word. He watched me. Still. Measuring. I didn't fill the silence. Didn't rush. Just stood there, relaxed. After a moment, he spoke again. You offer unverified claims, he said. And expect agreement. I shrugged lightly. I expect consideration, I replied. Another pause. You will think about it, I added calmly. Not a question. A statement. He didn't correct me. Good. I took a step back. That's all I needed, I said. I turned slightly toward the door. Then stopped. I glanced back at him. One more thing, I said. He didn't respond. I continued anyway. Don't mention this to anyone, I said. A brief pause. Then I smiled faintly. I won't either, I added. I looked directly into his eyes. Same rules, I said. Silence. No response. No agreement. But no rejection. That was enough. I nodded once. Then turned fully and walked to the door. It opened. I stepped out. The corridor felt quieter than before. Not because it changed. Because I had. I walked at the same pace as before. No rush. No hesitation. Inside, the system continued. 25 clones. Soon. More. I rolled my shoulder once. Yeah, I muttered quietly. That should get interesting. Chapter 14, Controlled Disclosure. Night settled over the outpost without changing anything. There was no real darkness here. The structures stayed lit, the activity didn't stop, and the Thraxans continued moving through their routines like they always did. I stood near the upper level of the main structure, leaning lightly against the railing, looking down at the base. Movement stayed steady. Rin directed a small group of clones through combat drills. Clean. Precise. No wasted motion. Baru stood across from them, occasionally stepping into correct positioning with force instead of words. Isagi watched everything, stepping in to adjust timing and coordination. Nagi lay on his back nearby, one leg bent slightly, watching with half-lidded eyes. Beiki stood near the perimeter, as always. Still. Watching everything. I exhaled quietly. Stable, I said under my breath. Inside. The system continued. 25 clones. Growing faster than anything I had before. No instability. No delay. Everything aligned. Then. A shift. I straightened slightly. Familiar. Heavy. Fast. I looked up. Yeah, I said quietly. That didn't take long. Bakey's head turned immediately. Someone is approaching, he said. I know, I replied. The others stopped. Rin turned. Baru looked up. Isagi narrowed his eyes slightly. Nagi didn't move. He's here, I added. A second later. Impact. Thrag landed just outside the structure. No hesitation. No announcement. The ground held, but the force was clear. I pushed off the railing and stepped forward. Stay, I said to the others. They didn't argue. I moved down. Bakey stepped beside me. We exited together. Thrag stood in the open space just beyond the main structure. His posture was unchanged. Controlled. Absolute. His gaze moved across the outpost. First. The Thraxans. He saw them. Registered them. Didn't react. Then. The Viltrumites. Rin. Baru. Isagi. Nagi. The 10. All visible. All present. He counted. I could tell. Then his eyes moved to me. That is all, he asked. I smiled slightly. Depends how you count, I replied. His gaze sharpened just a fraction. Answer, he said. I kept my tone even. There's more, I said. They just can't come yet. A pause. Then. He nodded once. Good, he said. He stepped forward slightly, looking past me at the others again. I will integrate them into the Empire, he continued. They will serve. I shook my head once. No, I said. That stopped him. Not physically. But his attention locked fully onto me now. Explain, he said. I took a step forward, hands relaxed at my sides. The coalition will respond eventually, I said calmly. They always do. He didn't interrupt. They have individuals who can fight Viltrumites, I continued. Not many. But enough to matter. His expression didn't change. They adapt, I added. They learn. They coordinate. I tilted my head slightly. If the rest of the Empire knows about them now, I said, gesturing lightly behind me, they become visible. Silence. I continued. And once they're visible, they get used early, I said. Wasted on problems that don't matter. Thrag watched me. Still. You propose concealment, he said. Yes, I replied. For how long, he asked. Until they matter, I said. A brief pause. Then I added. Until you need something the others can't provide. He didn't respond immediately. I could see the calculation. No emotion. Just evaluation. I stepped slightly to the side, giving him a clearer view of the group behind me. They're not like the others, I said. True. In more ways than one. They follow direction, I added. No hesitation. No questions. Baru shifted slightly behind me, but didn't speak. Rin remained still. Isagi watched Thrag closely. Nagi didn't move. The 10 stood in formation. Controlled. Thrag spoke again. You expect me to trust unknown assets, he said. I expect you to recognize value, I replied. He took a step closer. Now we stood only a few feet apart. You presume much, he said. I smiled faintly. I'm right, I said. Silence. The air didn't change. But the weight of the moment settled. He looked past me again. Then back at me. You will keep them hidden, he said. Yes, I replied. You will train them, he continued. Yes. You will ensure their loyalty, he said. I didn't hesitate. Already done, I replied. A pause. Then. He nodded once. They remain undisclosed, he said. Agreement. Clean. Direct. I gave a small nod. Good call, I said. He didn't respond to that. Of course he didn't. He turned slightly. Then stopped. One condition, he said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Of course there is. They answer to me, he said. I considered that for a second. Then nodded. When it matters, I replied. He looked at me again. Not a challenge. Not approval. Just acknowledgement. Then he turned fully. No further words. He launched. Gone within seconds. Silence returned. I stood there for a moment longer, looking at the empty sky. Then exhaled lightly. Well, I said. That went smoothly. Bakey stood beside me. He accepted, he said. Yeah, I replied. He did. I turned back toward the base. Let's keep it that way. Inside. The others were already watching. Baru spoke first. That was him, he asked. Yes, I said. He smirked slightly. Strong. Very, I replied. Sajai stepped forward. He didn't question much, he said.